The fear that reveals weakness. Have you ever stopped to think about why most men only feel alive when they have a woman by their side? Why is the fear of sleeping alone so strong that many prefer empty relationships to facing the cold pillow? Studies show that 1 in 3 men enter relationships just to avoid loneliness. Not for love, not for connection, but out of fear. And this fear reveals something brutal. Most men can't stand being with themselves. They can't stand the silence of their own minds. They need constant distractions, external validation, someone by their side to confirm that they exist. Because when they are alone, when the room is dark and there is no one to hug, they see themselves as they really are, and that terrifies them. But what if I told you that the man who sleeps alone is the most dangerous of all? Not because he is violent, not because he is cold, but because he is free. Free from the need for approval. Free from emotional prison. Free to build something that most will never have the courage to build. A life that doesn't depend on anyone. Today you will understand what really happens in the mind and soul of a man who doesn't need anyone to feel complete. Because sleeping alone is not the end. It's the beginning of your reconstruction. And when you understand that, you will look at your empty bed with respect, not with pity. Before continuing, tell me in the comments, how old are you and where are you watching from? And if you are going through this phase of loneliness or know someone who is, subscribe to the channel now. Because what you are about to hear will change the way you see loneliness forever. Let's start. The silence that reveals the man. The silence of a dark room has a force that is frightening. It screams everything you tried to ignore during the day. There's no cell phone to distract you, no woman to hug you, no excuse to save you. It's just you and your thoughts, your doubts, your fears, your failures. And as hard as that may seem, that's where the real man begins to be born. While many run from this pain with parties, empty dates, or soulless relationships, the man who decides to face the cold pillow is actually facing himself. This silence is not empty. It is revealing. And whoever can bear to hear their own soul scream in the dark learns to guide themselves without applause. Most men never stop, never think, never feel. They numb themselves with distractions and convince themselves that they are okay because they are accompanied. But being surrounded by people doesn't mean being at peace. Sometimes, the biggest noise is precisely in the wrong company. The man who sleeps alone learns to listen to the only voice that matters, his own. This introspection hurts, but it heals, because deep down, it is in silence that true plans are born. It is there that dreams are organized, traumas are faced, and masculinity is refined. There is a brutal difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Weak men associate an empty bed with defeat. Strong men see it as fertile ground for reconstruction. The absence of a woman in bed does not mean absence of value. It often means presence of purpose. The world will try to convince you that you need to be with someone to feel complete. But the truth is that only those who are already self-sufficient are complete, and silence is the only mirror that doesn't lie about who you are. The night is the final test of the man in training. During the day, he may seem busy, functional, even productive, but it is lying in bed alone that he faces the truth. Without distractions, without masks. Just him, the ceiling, and what lives inside him. It is at this moment that the question arises that separates men from boys. Are you running away from yourself or walking towards something greater? The answer lies in how you face the silence. It can be prison or preparation. You choose. Loneliness as a choice, not as punishment. There is a brutal difference between a man who is alone for lack of choice and one who chooses to be alone. Most people look at the empty bed and think, failure. But that reveals more about their minds than about you. Because whoever really understands the game knows that loneliness, when well managed, is a sign of strength. Sleeping alone is not a punishment. It is self-control. It's you saying, I don't need distraction to feel whole. And in a world where men run after any crumb of attention, the one who stands firm, even in silence, stands out not as a weakling, but as a master of himself. Undisciplined men cannot stand their own presence. They need constant stimulation, messages, affection, casual sex. anything that distracts them from the internal emptiness they carry. But the disciplined man transforms that same emptiness into a training ground. Each night alone is an exercise in focus, clarity, purpose. It is when he aligns his thoughts, corrects his flaws, and strengthens his limits. While some seek immediate comfort, he seeks constant evolution. And that makes him dangerous, because he is not a slave to emotion. True freedom begins when you no longer depend on anyone to feel good. Sleeping alone is the greatest proof that you have overcome this stage. You are not running after company for fear of loneliness. You are waiting for the right moment, the right person, without haste. And that's scary, because whoever doesn't need has the power of choice, and whoever chooses consciously builds real relationships, not games of neediness. This type of man is rare, but when he appears, he becomes a reference. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that every man who sleeps alone is stuck. But truly, strong men are not stuck. They are under construction. While others live jumping from lap to lap, you are polishing your empire. Because what you want is not a distraction. It's a true partner who adds to your life, not consumes you. And until she appears, you prefer to go it alone. This is the logic of the man with emotional discipline. He prioritizes peace before pleasure. The silence that bothers women. The man who is silent is not weak. He is observing. And this type of silence is disturbing, especially to women. They have been accustomed to reactive, anxious, needy men. When they find one who simply doesn't respond, doesn't beg, doesn't despair, their system goes on alert. Because the silence of a mature man is unpredictable. It's not the silence of someone who has lost. It's that of someone who is choosing. And every woman feels when she is not in control. Masculine silence is an unknown territory for many. They don't understand how someone can be at peace without a constant presence, because they themselves often measure value by the attention they receive. And when they don't receive that attention, especially from the one who seemed interested, something changes. The game changes. Curiosity arises. Doubt invades. Has he lost interest? Does he have someone else? Or worse, is he self-sufficient? And there is the great turnaround. A man who is self-sufficient confuses, intrigues, seduces. He doesn't send indirect messages. He doesn't post catchy phrases. He simply withdraws. And in silence he transmits more than words would ever transmit. This type of posture messes with the female ego because it shows something rare, male emotional independence. And deep down, every woman knows that this type of man is dangerous, because he can disappear and not come back. Two noisy men give away the game early. They talk too much, expose too much, show themselves too much. And with that they lose the mystery, the value, the magnetism. The man in silence, on the other hand, maintains control of the field. He observes more than he speaks. And in the world of relationships, whoever observes dominates. Women feel this, even if they can't explain it. And that's why true silence is worth more than 1,000 promises. There is a mystique in the man who doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't need to say he's okay. He simply is. He doesn't need to announce his value. He imposes himself through his posture. This silence is not absence. It is concentrated presence. And this energy is rare because it requires maturity, experience, and self-control. And like all rare things, it attracts, not by effort, but by essence. Many women confuse silence with disinterest, but the mature man is not disinterested. He is at peace. He doesn't need constant company to feel validated. And that, in a world where men live desperate for attention, is gold, because it demonstrates internal value. And internal value is what separates the desirable from the disposable. Women test limits all the time, but in the face of firm silence, even the tests stop. Sexual dominance, the forgotten superpower. The entire society has conditioned men to think that they need constant sex to feel masculine. Movies, series, social media, they all scream the same lie. A man of value must always have someone in bed. But this narrative only feeds an emotional addiction disguised as virility, because the true test of masculinity is not how many you can get. It's how many you can refuse. And even more, it's what you do with that energy when you're alone. The man who doesn't bend to the absence of sex is operating on a higher level, because if he dominates that, he dominates anything. Sexual self-control is the superpower that few develop. While most are slaves to impulses, DMs, apps, the man who sleeps alone chooses to redirect that force. This energy, when not wasted, becomes focus. It becomes discipline. It becomes productivity. While others exhaust themselves emotionally for a night of pleasure, you are building something bigger. And this type of construction is not shaken by passing rejections. The absence of sex also exposes the voids you've been trying to hide. Many use pleasure as anesthesia, but when the body stops, the mind screams. It is at this moment that you realize the problem was never the lack of a woman. It was the lack of purpose. The man who faces this head-on doesn't run away. He corrects. And each night in silence becomes a brick in the castle of his maturity. Because he understands that pleasure without direction is a disguised prison. Sex has its place. It's not the enemy. But the problem starts when it becomes the only escape valve. The man who only feels alive when he has sex is given over to instinct, not to conscience. He becomes predictable, manipulable, weak. The man who dominates his impulses becomes selective, strategic, strong. He doesn't sell himself cheap. And that's why, when he chooses someone, that person feels the weight of the choice. Because it wasn't neediness, it was decision. Women perceive this type of posture clearly. They know when they are in front of a man who is there out of desire, or when they are in front of one who is only there out of need. And they test that. They feel when you are able to wait, when you are able to say no and still maintain control of the situation. That's magnetism. That's respect. Growth in silence. When you sleep alone, something rare happens. You have time. Time to think, to plan, to understand where you are and where you want to go. While many are trapped in cycles of empty conversations, constant fights and lukewarm relationships, the man who chooses constructive solitude advances. He doesn't spend hours trying to decipher indirect messages or save what is already broken. He uses that time to study, train, work, grow, and that's when he starts to distance himself from the rest, because growth requires silence, and he is immersed in it. Relationships are wonderful when they add up, but when they become an emotional crutch, they paralyze. How many guys do you know who stopped dreaming after they got into the wrong relationship? How many stopped taking care of their own body, mind, finances, because they were too busy trying to please someone? The man who sleeps alone doesn't have that problem. He is the center of his own life. And that's not selfishness. It's strategic self-care. Loneliness creates clarity. It forces you to look in the mirror and ask, what am I doing with my life? And that question, as uncomfortable as it may be, is liberating, because it breaks the cycle of distraction. You don't have anyone telling you what to do, how to act, what to change. Just you, your conscience, and your plan of action. That's freedom. And freedom well used becomes growth. While many live putting out emotional fires, you are building your base. You are adjusting your routine, aligning your goals, strengthening your discipline. You are becoming the man who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. The type of man who, when he appears, commands respect without effort. Because he didn't get there by chance. He got there because he used every night alone as an investment. Investment in himself. And the return on that is gigantic. The man who grows alone carries a different energy. He doesn't live explaining himself, apologizing, justifying himself. He speaks little, but does a lot. That makes him magnetic. Because in a world full of noise, whoever grows in silence stands out. Not by personal marketing, but by consistency. And consistency is irresistible, especially for those who are tired of instability. Neediness versus training. Most men confuse loneliness with neediness. They think that being without a woman is synonymous with being lacking. But what if I told you that this phase of your life, where you are alone, is not punishment? It's preparation. You are not needy. You are in training. Training your focus, your self-control, your emotional resilience. The pain you feel today is the price of a stronger future. And every warrior, before the battle, goes through isolation. Training requires discomfort. No athlete evolves in the comfort zone. The same goes for the male mind. When you miss someone, you are being tested. Will you give in to neediness, or will you transform that into strength? The man who understands this game stops victimizing himself. He exchanges, "I'm alone," for "what am I alone for?" And that turnaround changes everything. Neediness screams for quick relief, but training asks for consistency. You will be tempted by the networks, by the memories, by the easy options. But every no you give today builds a more solid yes tomorrow. It's not about rejecting love, but about rejecting what distracts you from your mission. The right woman will come, but before her comes the process. And this process has no shortcut. A man who trains himself in solitude becomes a fortress. He stops moving on impulse and starts acting with strategy. He stops being the needy nice guy and becomes the man everyone respects, because he is no longer begging for presents. He is choosing consciously, and this selection is only possible when you are not dominated by neediness. Training gives you clarity, and clarity, in today's confusing world, is a powerful weapon. In this phase, you will feel disconnected. Your friends won't understand. People will ask if you're okay, and you will smile on the outside, but fight internal battles on the inside. It's normal. Every strong man has been through this, because transformation begins where others stop. You are not stagnant. You are preparing to level up. The man who doesn't beg for attention. We live in an era where everyone wants to be seen, noticed, validated. Men send good morning messages to 20 women, comment on everything, like every photo. Why? Because they learned to beg for attention, as if it were natural. But the man who doesn't play this game is scary, because he doesn't try to be noticed. He simply is. And this silent presence causes discomfort in those who are used to cheap applause. The man who doesn't beg for attention operates on another level. He doesn't comment on posts expecting a response. He doesn't keep an eye on the last scene. He has more to do. He has goals, objectives, priorities. And that's precisely what makes him magnetic. While others give themselves away for a like, he saves the energy for something bigger. He doesn't show off. He builds himself. And whoever builds himself naturally stands out. Women perceive this type of man from afar. Not because he speaks loudly, but because he speaks little. Not because he runs after, but because he walks in a straight line. And the most curious thing, the less attention he begs for, the more attention he receives. Not because he is manipulating, but because he is centered. And the center, my brother, has its own gravity. It attracts without asking. And when it moves away, it leaves a void. Most don't understand how a man can simply disappear. Disappear and not come back. Disappear and not send a message. Disappear and continue standing. But this type of disappearance is not disinterest. It's self-protection. It's the guy saying with actions, "I don't negotiate my value for attention." And that changes the game. Because the game only works with those who agree to play. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to answer everything. You don't need to justify yourself to those who don't respect you. When you understand that, you start to act with power. And power doesn't scream. It imposes. Silence becomes a tool. Absence becomes an answer. And self-control becomes a sign of high value. The guy who doesn't beg for attention is remembered because he breaks the pattern. He doesn't despair when he disappears. He doesn't explain himself when he returns. He is governed by another logic, that of energy scarcity. He knows that attention is a powerful currency, and that whoever distributes it too much loses value. That's why he chooses wisely, and that makes him rare. While others run after, he becomes the one who is pursued. When he chooses, it's not out of neediness. A man who has spent time alone, who doesn't beg for attention, who has polished himself in silence. When he chooses someone, he is not playing around. He doesn't play to fill a void. He doesn't search on impulse. He doesn't want distraction. He wants connection. And this difference is felt right away by the person on the other side. The woman realizes that she was not chosen out of neediness, but out of compatibility, out of purpose, out of conscious decision. This type of man doesn't appear all the time, and when he appears, he is different. He doesn't keep explaining himself. He doesn't need to say he's serious. He demonstrates, because his selection says it all. I could be with anyone, but I chose you. And that, for a woman who understands value, weighs heavily, because she knows that a real man doesn't give his heart away easily. He doesn't rush. He observes, analyzes who she is, what she wants, whether the energy adds up or just sucks, and only then acts. This posture may seem cold to those who are used to desperate men, but it is precisely what generates security, because it shows that he is not there out of convenience. He is there because it makes sense. Women pay attention to the type of attention they receive, and when it comes from a man who doesn't live giving it to just anyone, each gesture is worth triple. A good morning from him has more weight than a bouquet from the common man. An invitation from him carries expectation, because they know he doesn't call just anyone, and if he called, it's because he saw something, and that changes the way she looks at him. This type of man is not a hostage of passing emotions. He knows how to wait, he knows how to retreat when he needs to, and he knows how to act when he finds someone who really adds up. He doesn't force himself, and that makes him light and strong at the same time. Light because he doesn't need to impress. Strong because he knows his own value. The leader who is born in silence. While many are worried about not spending a night alone, the true man is building in silence. He doesn't need a presence by his side to feel valuable. He understands that this moment of solitude is fertile. Fertile to mature, to plan, to evolve. And more than that, fertile to prepare to lead. Because the man who sleeps alone today is the same one who will be in command tomorrow. Leadership is not born from euphoria. It is born from control. And there is no greater control than mastering yourself. Whoever can handle the cold pillow and the mute cell phone without freaking out is ready to handle pressure, rejection, crisis. While others drown in dramas, he dives into strategy. He doesn't run from loneliness. He uses it as a mind gym. The leader is not the most talkative, nor the most surrounded. He is the most centered. He is the one who, even alone, maintains focus, who, even in silence, knows where he is going. This man is dangerous because he doesn't need anyone to move forward. And when he decides to walk with someone, it's not to be carried, it's to carry. Sleeping alone gives you something that no one can steal. Clarity. Clarity about what you want, what you accept, and what you will never tolerate again. This clarity is what makes you be followed. People feel safe next to a man who knows where he is stepping. And this type of presence is rare, because it is not built with words. It is built with nights. Long, lonely, but transformative nights. Leadership is a consequence. It is the result of all the choices you make when no one is watching, when you decide to sleep without running after, when you choose to train instead of complaining, when you prefer silence instead of emotional confusion. These decisions shape a type of man who commands respect. And this respect is not conquered with cliches, but with lived posture. The man who sleeps alone is learning to be his own guide. And every man who knows how to guide himself will one day be followed, because he shows in practice that he doesn't need to be led by emotions. He acts with logic, with vision, with calm, and this energy attracts people who seek direction, whether in relationships, business, or friendships. This man becomes a reference simply because he learned to walk alone. If this video spoke to you, tell me here in the comments. I'm under construction. Show that you are part of this silent brotherhood. And if this content helped you, subscribe to the channel now, because here we tell the truth that others hide. Stay on the screen. The next video is already appearing. And it will deepen even more what you have just learned. The power has always been inside you. You just needed to wake up. Now, go and be the leader you were born to be.